Good evening, everyone. I have been a bit quiet on the video making front this week because of the triple whammy of bad back, bad dental teeth experience and stinky cold. And the stinky cold still puts me at risk of descending into raucous coughing at any stage of the proceeding, and also puts me at risk of breaking out into a cold sweat because my temperature is still going up and down and it is all over the place. So, however, I'm much better than I was, and I'm going to be okay for this weekend's marvellous tarot community meetup in Nottingham, where I'm going to be meeting with many marvellous people like Simon from Hermit's Cave and Kelly from Kelly Bear and Becca from Becca Tarot Night Owl and Selkie and various others. I'm not going to mention everyone because I'll miss someone out if I do that. So I'm looking forward to it. I'm determined to be over this cold by the time I get there, and basically it's going to be great. So what I thought I would do for this video, having made a little video earlier on this evening about my decision to connect with bee energy. You can see the bee energy. Oh, and you can also, I don't know if you can see, you might be able to see that little Maya is, Maya, say hello. Can you see Maya? She's there. She's maybe not showing up on camera, but she's in the window, peering out at the neighbours, aren't you, Maya? Keeping an eye on things. And my bee card, look, bee card. Yes. My bee card is there. I'm engaging still with the energy of the bee. My last video explains all. What I thought I would do for this video, however, is something short and sweet. I'll try and make it short and sweet anyway. And that is a VR to Kelly Bear on her hashtag, my favourite 5 decks, or 5 favourite decks, or whatever it is. I can't remember. You'll know it because you'll see it in the title. I have to confess, I started preparing for this, and in preparing for it, oh, there she is. Are you off on your travels now? She's off on her travels. Oh, she's going to want to get let out. Why do you always want to get let out when I'm all settled down? Bear with, bear with. Are you going down? Come on then. Maya is sorted and I have returned. Yes, I misunderstood this tag because I thought it was your favourite 5 tarot decks, and so I have looked out 5 tarot decks. I realised that it's actually just your favourite 5 decks, so I could have included oracle decks, but that would have just confused things because it took me long enough to figure out my favourite 5 tarot decks. So here is what I want to do. I want to go through with you my current favourite 5 tarot decks. I will begin by saying that I am choosing to not include 2 decks which I definitely could not live without. And I should have prepared. Where is my... Oh, the episode is organised. Got it. There are 2 decks that I absolutely could not live without. And but I'm not going to include them in this kind of run through because they're just so... They're so foundational and so ubiquitous to me that I think probably it goes without saying in my case that I would like these. So the first one is good old Rider-Waite-Smith and my very precious, delightful copy that I hand modified myself. It's my giant Rider-Waite-Smith. I love this deck because, well, one, because I, coloured it in with the elemental associations. And what is not to love, I ask you about that. So, it's just too cool for words. And the majors are pink. See? So my elementally coloured, giant-sized Rider-Waite-Smith deck, which I stuck magnetic strips on so I could stick them on my whiteboard when I'm doing things like tarot to the nines and chakras to the stars and various other things like that. So I love this deck. I love the Rider-Waite-Smith deck generally. I love this version of the deck because the larger cards mean that some of the detail really pops. Also, the giant-sized Rider-Waite-Smith deck is a fairly accurate representation of Pixie's artwork. Some of the more modern decks and even some of the smaller versions of the deck sometimes miss little details, and I love this one because you really see the detail. And in fact, if you have a look at my tarot tips video, the one where I say get your magnifying glass out, you'll see that I use this deck to show you some of the fascinating detail that is in the cards. So I love this deck. I love this version of the deck. I have various Rider-Waite-Smith versions of the actual Rider-Waite-Smith deck. I love it, love it, love it. Could not live without it. But it does not feature in this video. Let me just put the light on my computer on, because I'm trying to get... I don't have very much in the way of light here at the moment. I need to get more light sorted. Oh, I'm not sure that's better. Does that wash me out? Is that worse? And... oh, what the hell? That's better. Oh, I like that. That's a bit more... a bit more like... it covers up the dark circles. So we'll stick with that for now. So, yes, love it. Couldn't do without it, but it does not feature in this top 5. I'm cheating a bit already, you see. So, sorry, Kelly. You can tell me off when we meet. The other deck that does not feature in this top 5, but I could not live without, so I'm telling you about it in this video, is... oh, that's the funny little other card. But the Thoth deck is just stunning. It's just absolutely amazing. I love it so much. I love it even more having gone into the detail of the deck by reading Lon Milo Duquette. Look at that moon card. It is amazing. Look at the death card. Oh my god, it's stunning, stunning, stunning. Somebody told me that I look a bit like a fool. Now, come on, let's do a comparison. Can I do this? Maybe I need to be there. And I need to... do I look like the fool? Do I look like the fool? I don't know. I'm not sure I do. Anyway, it's just amazing. And Frida Harris's artwork is amazing. And the history of the deck is amazing. And if you want to know more about it, read Lon Milo Duquette's Understanding Aleister Crowley's Thoth Tarot. Because it is just... it's brilliant. Just brilliant. Such a good book. I would like to read that one. It's so good. So those, for me, kind of go without saying. You'll notice I have not included in here. I tend to think of the main standard foundational tarot decks, of course, as Rider-Waite-Smith, Thoth, and the kind of Marseille type deck, and there are various different variations of that. I've not included the Marseille type deck as a foundational one because, to be honest, it's not that foundational for me. I'm just being very honest here. I don't dislike the Marseille style decks. I don't dislike Pippish decks. In fact, one of them features in here, in my top 5. But as a whole, it's not what I would go for. So there you have it. So now, on to the top 5, the actual top 5. Maybe with one extra one stuck in just for good luck. So, my first one that I have to put in my top 5. I'm not doing these in any kind of order, by the way. I'm not doing it ascending order. I decided it was hard enough choosing 5 decks without then ordering them. So I'm just telling you 5 of my favourite decks so that you're aware of them. And one will be of no surprise to anyone who's been following this channel, particularly those of you who've been following it from the beginning, because it's the very first deck that I featured on this channel, because it's the very first deck that I owned. And it is the very marvellous Tarot of the Old Path. And this is, you can tell by the grubby edges, this is my very first tarot deck that has been with me since I was a mere whippersnapper of an 18-year-old in Aberdeen, at Aberdeen University. And I was first properly introduced to the wonderful world of tarot, and I went and bought myself this deck because it just jumped out at me from the shelves, and I wanted it, and I got it, and I have not... I knew the coughing would come soon. I have not looked back since. This deck has seen me through thick and thin. It has been with me throughout my tarot journey. I just think it's beautiful. I think the imagery in it is just marvellous. I love the cleanness and the clearness and the whiteness and the space in the cards. I love the fact that it is a Rider-Waite-Smith based deck. I didn't know that when I got it, but it meant that in learning this deck I effectively learned the Rider-Waite-Smith system, which was great. It stood me in good stead. Look at the Death card. Now I know that for some people the whole kind of thing of, oh, there's the Grim Reaper and there's the baby, that's a bit twee. I know they might think that, but I love it. And the owl, oh, it's just gorgeous. And so yeah, this deck has been with me all these years and I will never part with it. I love it still. I trust this deck. This is a deck that I can go to when I need help, when I need guidance. I always feel that it has got my back. Always feel that. Yeah, it's my deck. It is, you know, I hear people talk about soul decks. I don't really think in those terms, but I think if I had to choose a deck and say it was my soul deck, this would be the one. And also, you gotta love it because look at the Temperance card. Look at that alien creature with the big brain thing on its head. Is this focusing? I hope it is. Anyway, it's just a kind of marvellous and slightly odd deck. So I love it. That is Tarot of the Old Path, and as I say, it is a deck that will be with me forevermore. So the zip on this bag is broken, so I can't do a dramatic zip close, but you know what I mean. So that's that. Now the other deck is another Rider-Waite-Smith deck, and I'm mentioning this one because this is the deck that kind of rekindled my interest in tarot. I go through phases with tarot, and I've been through various cycles of being into tarot. My interests in learning tend to be cyclical. So I'll delve into something in depth for ages, for a long time, and then I'll kind of get bored and I'll leave it and I'll come back to it again, and each time it's like the cycle or this spiral kind of takes me a bit deeper and deeper and deeper. And I think a really pivotal point was when I reconnected with tarot around the same time that I decided that I wanted to start a YouTube channel, and then a few months later I actually did. But the deck that caught my attention around about that time and that I soon fell in love with was the Spiral Tarot. Now the Spiral Tarot, if you buy it, or as you buy it, the cards, I have to tell you, come with this ghastly pink purpley border. I don't know what they were thinking, and this horrible white against red lettering for the cards. I don't get it at all. So I, of course, trimmed the cards, and now they are stunning. This is not focusing properly, so I'm going to press that little thing, and then you, oh dear, that's too much light. No, let's do it again. Right, okay. I think that will be better. I think it might focus a bit better. I might be wrong. Focus just fine, as Becca would say about Swinecam. I miss Swinecam, Becca. Bring Swinecam back. I'm going to start a campaign. So this is Spiral Tarot. High Priestess. Look at that card. Beautiful. And look how amazing they look without the borders. They're too small. The cards are quite small anyway, even with the borders. But without the borders, they look phenomenal. And one day, I hope they will bring this deck out. They will bring it out large size without the borders, and I will be happy. And see, look, remember, strength card with hideous border, strength card without hideous border. There is no contest. It's just amazing. Temperance. I love the Hermit. Great. I could go on showing you this one all day, but I have done a walkthrough of it, so there's no point in doing that. But just to say, it's lovely, and I'll show you one of my very favourite cards in the deck. It's Six of Swords. Moves me every time. Love it. Love it. So that's the Spiral Tarot, and I've also recently acquired the Celestial Tarot, which Kay Steventon illustrated. Like this was her deck, or is her deck, which she created and illustrated, and then she also illustrated with the with Brian Clark. I think Brian Clark wrote the Celestial Tarot book and deck, and she illustrated it, and so that's a very nice one as well, because I love her artwork. So that's that. So they're both Rider-Waite-Smith. They both fit into that kind of category. Another deck that I really, really love, and I feel very lucky to have, is, if I can get into my spider bag. I think I'm delirious on cough medicine. It is the Mythic Tarot, the original Mythic Tarot, the one with the original illustrations. And again, I just love this deck. I love it because it works really well as just a tarot deck. You know, there's no doubt about that. This could be your first deck very easily, and it would read really well, and there's nothing in it that's so out there that you just couldn't learn the basic kind of tarot system. But, you know, each of the characters, there's Pandora as the star. all of the characters are characters from mythology, so you can also, of course, learn wonderful things about mythology as you study the deck. And the cardstock is not brilliant, but it's okay, a bit flimsy. This has been re-released with new illustrations, which I'm not quite so fond of, but you know, even that deck would work well, because really they're just reimagining the same pictures. Look at that Temperance card, isn't that lovely? And it comes with, if you get the deck and book set, it comes with its own little book, quite a big book actually, and has information in it about all the cards and the deck itself. And then recently I acquired this, which is the Mythic Tarot Workbook, and I'm looking forward to delving into that, because it goes through each of the cards as well, and it gives you cards that you can colour in yourself if you want and take notes on the cards. And I think that works really well. So I love it because I love mythology. I'm very interested in mythology. I love the way that mythology and tarot and the collective unconscious and archetypes and all that kind of stuff fit together so well. And it really kind of comes out in the Mythic Tarot. And of course, it's the Mythic Tarot itself is written by, or created by, a combination of Juliet Jarman Burke and Liz Green. Liz Green being an astrologer, and a very thoughtful astrologer, I think. So there is astrological information in there. So if you're interested in that kind of thing and you find that astrology adds something to your tarot readings, it's a very good deck to have for that reason. So that is Tarot of the Old Path, Spiral Tarot, Mythic Tarot. So I've got 2 decks left, haven't I, in my top 5 faves. Given that I've already spoken about the Rider-Waite-Smith and Thoth, I slipped them in at the beginning as a preamble. So I've got 2 decks left. But I'm actually going to talk about 3, because the 4th place is one that I found difficult to choose between, and I wanted to include a kind of a Pippish type deck. So for me, it's between the Masonic Tarot deck and the Ancient Italian Tarot. I think, if I'm honest, the Masonic has just got it, just pips it at the post. But look at the Ancient Italian Tarot. Look at how amazing and gorgeous and just generally tarot-y these cards are. And the reason I like these is, the reason I got into tarot when I was a student is a friend of mine who lived in, you would not want to get whacked on the head with that, would you? That would put you out like a light. A friend of mine who lived in the room above me at my hall of residence when I was a student had a tarot deck. I think her deck was the one JJ Swiss, but of course it kind of, well, it was a pip-ish deck, pip deck, it was a kind of pip deck. And so some of the cards looked rather like these. So I like this one because it reminds me of the deck that I first had a tarot reading from, and that I first kind of studied because it was my friend's deck and she let me play with it and use it and study it with her. And that was very much a good thing. So I'm fond of this deck for that reason, and so it gets an honourable mention in my top 5, which I know it's kind of turned into a top 8, but what can I say? That's just how I roll. I can't get it back in. I hate tuck boxes. I don't like the tuck box kind of thing. I will sort that out later. Ancient Italian Tarot. But this place really goes to this fascinating deck, the Masonic deck. It's fascinating because I don't understand half of it. Mainly because the guidebook for it, which is quite thick, is not in English. So, oh, hang on. I'm wrong. It is in English, but there are parts of it that are in English in terms of talking about the way that each of the cards is constructed, particularly in terms of the majors. But if I remember correctly, it doesn't really go into all of the background information about why they're constructed in relation to Masonic thought. And I believe that possibly in French, there is another book that goes with this deck that goes into more detail, and that one is not available in English. So I don't understand this deck fully. I understand a little bit from what I can read in the book, but I love the illustrations, particularly the majors. There's the Chariot. It's just amazing. Justice. There is something magnificent about this deck, and unusual as well. It doesn't look to me like any other deck that I've seen. The illustrations on it are not like any other deck that I've seen. There's strength. I just think it's enchanting. I think it pays close study. The colour is just glorious. It really stands out. And it's got all kinds of sacred geometry kind of things happening in it, which make it really fascinating. Look at that star. Oh, it's just beautiful. And the moon. I'm trying to find my favourite major, I think, in this deck. Although it's hard to choose because they're all just so lovely. I think, yeah, this is the one. This one, oh, this gives me the feels, this one does. It's the High Priestess. Look at that High Priestess. In shadow, behind the veil, with a rainbow arcing above her head. Oh, I love it. I just love this deck. It is just amazing. And the Magician is pretty cool too. So those are the kind of majors. And then the minors, as I say, are kind of pip style. So not as exciting, but still pretty cool in the way that they're drawn and everything. And also interestingly, in this deck, it goes for, if I'm remembering this correctly, I've dropped the cards. I knew that would happen. I think I'm right in saying that this deck has got air is associated with the wands, and fire is associated with the swords. But I might be wrong there. I don't know if that's right, because I'm maybe confusing myself with another deck now. I'm not very prepared, as you can tell, because there is fire on these wands. There's fire coming out of the wands, so they must be fire, surely. I think I'm getting muddled up with something else. Anyway, I love this deck so much I don't even know anything about it. But look how cool these cards are. So I really need to get this deck out and study it again. I'm kind of geeking out on this deck because I have to confess, although it's one I couldn't live without, the reason I chose it is because I have gone through quite a lot of my decks recently to figure out whether I could sell any or pass any on to someone else, and this one has gone through my hand several times and I thought, is it time to part with it? And I cannot part with it. How could you part with this deck? Look at it. I'm falling in love all over again in the very... Before your eyes, I am reconnecting with this deck. So I'm going to... What? Oh, that's his son. The Lover. I need to... Oh, and look at the back. Look at the back. Sacred geometry a go-go. So I need to be careful because I've dropped these cards and I don't want to... I've dropped the box now. And I don't want to roll my chair over them accidentally. That would not be good. Let me just show you. Excuse me, I'm still here. Look at the Ace of Cups. Look at that. It's like the Hand of Glory or something. So I need to reconnect with that deck because it's just so amazing. Okay, so I'm going to be careful not to roll over those cards. My final deck, I decided that for the final deck I had to choose, or wanted to choose, a modern deck. A modern deck that kind of was reflective of today's society and the diversity within today's society. And there are a lot of decks out, and there have been a lot of decks recently that have tried very hard to do that, and have done that wonderfully well in a number of different ways. So, you know, I've thought about the Everyday Enchantment, I've thought about the Next World Tarot, but the one that has captured my heart most of all is actually one, I think that Kelly Bear may have featured this one as well, and I love it. It is the Numinous Tarot. And when I first saw this deck being developed, I just was captured by its loveliness. And you know how you have that thing where you might get a deck or see a deck and you order it and it comes in and somehow it disappoints? This one has not disappointed. This deck is just gorgeous. It's beautiful. I feel like it's one of these decks where you can kind of make friends with the people who are depicted in it. They feel both real and numinous, as the name would say, liminal, real and transcendent all at the same time. And I love that. So it's like little kind of glimpses of everyday life, yet also an otherworldly enchantment about everyday life, which I think is really marvellous. I love that card, the Diviner. High Priestess, of course. So that is the Numinous Tarot, and again I've done a walkthrough of this, so I don't think I need to give you another walkthrough, but just to say that because of the diversity I see in this deck and the beauty of the artwork and the authenticity of it, it really has captured a place in my heart, and I love it so much. So those are my top 5 fave decks at the moment. And, you know, it may change, because they do change every so often. Rider-Waite-Smith and Thoth, I think, will always be there for me foundationally, and I will never, ever stop loving my Tarot of the Old Path, because it's just so close to my heart. But everything else kind of flexes and changes over time. So I hope you've enjoyed that. I've enjoyed watching all the VRs so far to Kelly's video, and I hope that there will be more. So if you haven't seen Kelly's video, I'll put the link below. She also has a playlist on her channel of other responses to this hashtag, and she does this every year, or most years she updates it. So she's got about 3 or 4 videos that she's done already. So I might do the same. Maybe in a year's time we'll come back and look at what my top 5 or top 8 faves are again, and yeah, we'll just see how it all pans out. So until then, thank you all for being here, and I'll see you again probably quite soon, because I'm going to film another video, because I've got the house to myself for another 45 minutes and I want to do a book and deck review. Watch this space. See you soon.